Whenever I talk to my students, or even I just think about what happened at Cold Harbor, there's been a debate among historians as to whether tactically it was correct, strategically it made sense.
The Confederate forces were reeling from the staggering losses sustained at the Battle of the Wilderness just days earlier, where the brutal close-quarter fighting had decimated their ranks. With no reinforcements on the horizon, Lee's strategic options were severely limited. He had to rely on hastily constructed earthworks and the sheer determination of the men to hold a line against the relentless Union assault. This stark landscape of desperation and defiance encapsulates the dire straits in which the Confederate Army found itself, fighting not just for victory, but for survival. U.S. Grant was determined to fight all summer long if he had to in order to take Richmond. So on the evening of May the 7th, he started his infantry toward Spotsylvania Courthouse in a desperate race to beat Robert E. Lee to his objective. After supper on the 7th, the Texas Brigade, which was still under the command of John Gregg, was given an extra day's ration of cornmeal and bacon and moved out in a race to beat Grant to Spotsylvania. Marching all night long, the Texans reached the Blockhouse Bridge at the Po River just outside of Spotsylvania, beating Warren's 5th Corps to the crossroads, and settled in for a breakfast of cold rations. After breakfast, Field's division, which included the Texans, advanced towards the village of Spotsylvania Courthouse to confront Brigadier General James Wilson's Federal cavalry, who promptly withdrew. Upon returning to Laurel Hill, the Texans spent the entire night of May the 8th diligently building entrenchments and artillery positions, utilizing tin cups, plates, and any available fence rails. On May the 10th, General Grant launched a major offensive against the Confederate defenses, targeting their left flank. The Union's multiple assaults heavily impacted the Texas Brigade, amongst others. Grant had marshaled 40,000 troops to strike at Anderson and Ewell's corps. 3 full Federal divisions concentrated their attack on the trenches left of the Muleshoe, defended by the Texans in the left center of the Confederate line. A fierce battle erupted, but with deadly accurate fire from behind fortified breastworks and trenches, the first 2 massive Union attacks were defeated. Following these assaults, John Gregg ordered his men to collect rifles and ammunition from the Union dead and wounded in front of their breastworks, bracing for another wave of attacks. The third and final attack occurred at 7 p.m., when the Federals emerged from cover and launched their assault. The 4th and 5th Texas, along with the 3rd Arkansas, managed to check the attack. However, the 1st Texas struggled against the onslaught. The Union forces broke into their defenses, leading to intense hand-to-hand combat. It wasn't until the 3rd Arkansas, 4th and 5th Texas delivered flanking fire that the Federals were forced to retreat in disarray. After the action on May the 10th, the Texans, although not involved in any of the heavy action at the Muleshoe and Bloody Angle, remained under constant fire from Union snipers until, on May the 21st, Grant once again disengaged and moved south, attempting to turn Lee's right flank and reach Richmond. After 2 days of fighting at the North Anna River, where the Texas Brigade wasn't engaged, Grant once again moved to the southeast to the crossroads at Cold Harbor. We're at the Cold Harbor battlefield just behind the Visitor Center. This was familiar ground for the Texans. The Gaines Mill battlefield, where they'd fought just 2 years earlier during the 7 Days campaign, lies about a mile to the south of us. And about a mile behind us are the strategic crossroads of Old Cold Harbor that Philip Sheridan's Union cavalry captured on June 1st, 1864. About a half a mile north of us, Gregg's Texas Brigade was just arriving and starting to dig their earthwork defenses. All day on the 2nd, the Texans worked to build these breastworks using cups, canteens cut in half and their bayonets. Less than 300 yards separated the Union and Confederate lines. Anderson's Georgians and Law's Alabamians were on the left, and Hunton's Virginians were on the right. At 4:30 a.m. on June the 3rd, Grant attacked, with the Ohio and Pennsylvania troops leading the charge. Joseph B. Pauley, a corporal in the 4th Texas, wrote in his book,
"The charge of the Federals was gallant enough to deserve success. They came forward in 4 lines about 50 yards apart, and thus presented the fairest of targets for the Texas and Arkansas marksmanship. The slaughter was terrible. In 15 minutes their struggle lasted. 10,000 Union soldiers were killed or wounded."
He went on to say,
At 9 o'clock the same morning, Grant ordered the assault renewed. But not a man in the Union ranks moved forward, for not a man of them but knew it was suicidal.
By 1:30 p.m., Grant suspended offensive operations. The field of battle was thick with the wounded and dead. One last entry into a Union soldier's diary said,
June 3rd, Cold Harbor. I was killed.
Whenever I talk to my students, or even I just think about what happened at Cold Harbor, there's been a debate among historians as to whether tactically it was correct, strategically it made sense, but I always go back to what Grant wrote in his memoirs, reflecting on his career in the war and the many, many operations that he directed. He said there was really only one thing that he regretted that he might take back if he could possibly do that, and that was the charges at Cold Harbor in June 1864.